Hey everybody, Mr. Moblin coming at you again with an APUSH video. This is our fourth video, part 4 in the topic 6.7, the labor movement in the late 19th century. And so, previously we talked about how, conditions are going to be such that unionization is going to become more popular across America, and especially the idea of national labor unions, the idea of trying to, have larger numbers and therefore having more influence and power and strength as one voice to be able to affect change in the workplace and maybe even affect change politically and socially. Now we saw the Knights of Labor previously, kind of base their formula on the idea of more is always better. Doesn't matter if you're skilled or unskilled, male, female, white, black, didn't matter. Your political affiliation didn't really matter. Join this massive tent called the Knights of Labor. But then we saw that undone with the Haymarket Square riot in 1886. And so the question becomes, could you have a big national union and still have it be successful? Can that be done? And the answer to that is yes. And that's going to be through the creation of Samuel Gompers's the American Federation of Labor, a.k.a. the AFL. Now, how's the AFL going to be working? Well, here's one notable difference with the Knights of the AFL versus the Knights of Labor. Whereas the Knights of Labor took in everybody, basically, skilled and unskilled, didn't matter. The AFL only unionized skilled workers, and there's a reason for this. If you're talking about unionizing somebody that is shoveling coal, they don't have, there's not a lot of leverage in, a coal, shoveler going on strike. That worker could be very easily replaced. But if you're talking about somebody that is a crane operator, somebody that actually has to be trained, to be able to do that job, and that person goes on strike, well, now that's a different situation. That employee, that union that represents that crane operator has a lot more leverage in terms of being able to try to achieve what they want. So the AFL is only going to be bringing in skilled workers. Additionally, all right, there was the idea of using craft unions to once again kind of specialize in their targeting focus. They were not as ideologically bent as like the Knights of Labor. They weren't looking to create a, proto-socialist or communist society. They, are not looking to, bridge the gender gap between men and women. And in fact, they're not going to be, associated with violent activities. A lot of what the AFL is going to be proposing to try to settle disputes that they're going to have with management is the use of what we call collective bargaining. The idea being is that management sits down, labor sits down across the table from them, and they talk out their differences. And it might even mean bringing in an independent third-party mediator to kind of bridge that gap. But the idea being is that you settle your issues and you hammer out a contract through negotiations, negotiations in good faith by both sides, as opposed to using strikes and violent activity and stuff like that. Now, that's not to say the AFL is averse to using a strike, but it's seen as a much more last-minute kind of thing than than other groups. So, with that being said, the AFL is going to start to grow in number and be successful. But even though the AFL is going to start on its path towards becoming the most significant and influential union in American history, it's still in its infancy. And across America, you are still seeing local labor unions struggling to achieve their goals. One example of this is going to be at the Homestead steel plant in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, part of the Carnegie Steel Empire. And the local union there is going to be seeing wages cut for its workers. And so what they will do is they will organize a strike. Unfortunately, though, this is going to be quite violent. As you can see here, Carnegie Steel had becoming more and more profitable, as time has gone on. So the idea being is, hey, why are you cutting wages as the company is becoming more profitable? But anyhow, the local plant manager, a guy named Henry Frick here on the left, is going to be facing an assassination attempt by one of the workers here pictured on the right. And so what this reflected is that, for many of these local unions, there is going to be a willingness to use violence to try to achieve their goals. The idea being is that, if you kill off, the plant manager, then the management is going to have to take you seriously in terms of, what you're going to be demanding. Now, that being said, let me go back here for a moment. What's going to happen, unfortunately, for the workers at Homestead is that they're not going to be able to get a lot of national sympathetic support for what they're doing, even though, they are trying to address, wage exploitation and stuff like that. In the end, Pinkertons will be brought in and will ultimately crush the strike and then ultimately crush the local union. Once again, we're seeing, violence is not proving to be an effective means to achieve change, be it Haymarket Square, be it the Great Railroad Strike, or be it here at Homestead. Now, 2 years later, we're going to be seeing another incident take place at the Pullman Company in Chicago, Illinois. Now, Pullman made luxury railroad cars, as you can see pictured here, and so this was a very profitable industry. And what the Pullman Company did, like some others, like at Hershey, Pennsylvania, and a few other places, they created what were known as company towns. And a company town was designed to provide all of the basic, services and building a sense of community that you would find in a normal town, but put it all though under one roof, under the management of the company. So in other words, if you went to go work at Pullman, you would then be renting homes from the Pullman Company. You had, schools provided by the Pullman Company. You had, retail stores provided by the Pullman Company. And, that might show a sense of, hey, we're going to create this community here amongst the employees. But understand that in many respects, these company towns did not exist, simply out of a sense of trying to build community. It was really to help maximize profits for the company. In the case of, like Pullman, the idea being is, hey, maybe we can pay workers not in, actual cash, but pay them in what was called scrip. Scrip was basically, for lack of a better term, gift certificates. And it basically gave credits to employees that could be only redeemable at, company-owned retail stores. So in other words, you are tied to that company. You're tied to that community. You can't take those wages and leave and use them anywhere. They were only usable at the company stores. And of course, since they've got you, they got you, locked down in terms of where you can spend your money, those company stores are going to be charging exorbitant prices for the stuff that you're going to need. And of course, if you're only getting paid in scrip, it makes it harder to leave the company, because you don't have any money in your pocket. So, company towns are, going to be another, problematic aspect of some of this industrialization going on. Now, Pullman will be, like Homestead before it, cutting wages for its employees. And the local union, led by a man by the name of Eugene Debs, who is going to be a pivotal figure in the history of organized labor in this country, and then, moving into the 20th century as a repeated socialist candidate for president, they're going to organize a strike. And, kind of like the railroad strike, almost 20 years earlier, the idea being is that they're going to shut down the railroads, in this case, in and out of the city of Chicago. And of course, by this time, Chicago is the second biggest city in America at the time. And, you know, the idea being is if you shut down the rail lines coming in and out of Chicago, you've got Chicago in a stranglehold. And if you've got the city in a stranglehold, you're going to get attention and you're going to get your demands met. You're basically holding the city of Chicago hostage to get your goals achieved. Now, once again, you know, this is kind of a violent / terroristic way to try to get this done. Now, understand, you know, you might be thinking, you know, what's with these unions? You know, some of them so quick to, you know, get, you know, to use violence. Well, part of it is the fact that there's a history of, you know, business owners using Pinkertons and other hired thugs to use violence to intimidate them. So the idea being is, you know, using violence against the group that's more than willing to use violence against them is justified. Additionally, there's also the sense of, you know, if the business owners, you know, are not listening to you, you know, if you are just repeatedly ignored and ignored and ignored, you know, through peaceful means, maybe violence is the only way that you can actually get heard. So that kind of explains some of it. But like we saw at Homestead, like we saw in the Great Railroad Strike, the Pullman strike is not going to be helpful for the local union there, especially once again when you've got government officials that are in league with business owners. Grover Cleveland will be in the midst of his second term as president, and you know, Cleveland is going to be of the mindset, like many conservatives of that time period, was that you know, unions did not have a right to stop the national economy. They did not have a right to, you know, take hostage railroad lines. That was not allowable. And so what Cleveland ends up doing is he orders that the U.S. mail be put on the rail lines. Why? Well, what happens is that when this occurs, it's no longer a state issue. You are now talking about blocking the federal mail, which now makes it a federal issue, which then allows President Cleveland to send in federal troops to shut down the strike. In addition to that, you're going to be seeing a federal judge issue an injunction outlawing the strike as well, which also allows police forces to shut down the strike. So, you know, understand that, you know, these strikes of the late 19th century, here's Debs right here, strikes of the late 19th century are not going to be particularly successful for a number of reasons. Lack of resources, lack of government assistance, you know, a sense that, you know, violent means are not going to be very well received, you know, for the American people. So understand there's going to be challenges. And even though only 3% of American laborers are unionized at this point, it is just the beginning. You know, the AFL is growing. So understand the labor movement is kind of going through its childhood here in many respects. You know, it's going through its growing pains and learning from mistakes and learning from challenges. And as we get into the 20th century, the union movement will get even stronger and really peak once we get into the 1930s and 40s. But obviously, we'll get to that in the future. Okay? All right, so that's the labor movement in the late 19th century. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.